Hi, my name is Heather Moore. I'm a whistleblower investigator for a corrupt attorney who worked for the Democratic National Committee, the Department of Justice, while at Human Rights Campaign that was independently contracted by the Department of Justice to investigate civil rights violations, which also includes forms of fraud, any type of waste, fraud, and abuse at any type of federally regulated or federally funded facility. He said I answered straight to Tony West, which I now know Tony West was Kamala Harris's brother-in-law. So I'm making this video so that people know exactly why I'm in Burlington, Vermont. When Chad Cronin took my case and started this investigation, it was mandatory. Jim Crow sort of crime bill rhetoric, healthcare fraud, and police misconduct that was gay bashing. It was racist in the gay bashing and sexist against me as a witness who launched an investigation into child sex trafficking, child pornography, other RICO violations as a bogus tax-exempt nonprofit called Project Innocence, which is a play off the Innocence Project, which they did that deliberately, by Richard Beasley, Scott Mason, John Mason, and a myriad of other incarcerated and unincarcerated sex offenders in the Orange County, Florida court, and in Pensacola. I had to give a sworn recorded statement to Homeland Security officer or agent and Pensacola police officer Chris Wilkinson. A detective was there, I don't remember his name, and eventually that Richard Beasley's sex offender probation specialist showed up. He told me to call him when they got there, which we now know it was so he could micromanage to hide his mistakes that gave Beasley and Mason new victims. While under very close monitored sex offender probation with an ankle monitor, GPS monitor, he had to log all of his miles, turn those log sheets in. He was basically under house arrest. And he's committing all these crimes right under his nose. So this Glenn Harris guy was trying to save face. Not only as a Department of Corrections sex offender specialist, but as an officer in the U.S. Navy, and African American, probably Native American too, because we were all enslaved together. And I'm Native American, descendant of 2 Native American slaves owned by the Moore estate or plantation or whatever it's called. So I'm in Burlington because when Chad launched our mandated federal Brady violations and racketeering and waste, fraud, abuse investigation, to sum it up as quickly as possible, which he said was felony murder because their violence against me that got me wrongfully incarcerated with cancer led to Mason walking and he murdered a child. Chad said this is their felonies led to that kid's death. This is some basically felony murder. I don't remember exactly how he put it, or actually I do remember. I'm just not saying it because I want to see if I believe he's still alive, and I believe he's going to lie about it, or his father, who's now running his law firm, is going to lie about it. So I'm going to choose my words carefully, but basically I had no idea who Senator Sanders was. I had no idea what the word progressive was. Chad mentioned democratic socialism a few times when he was saying he really liked Elizabeth Warren. Didn't really know who she was. Didn't know that there was another aspect, if there even was another aspect, to the Democratic Party as the progressive wing, or what I now know to be their centrists, and then there's conservative Democrats. I didn't know all that. I've always been a registered Democrat anytime I registered to vote. And that goes back to a friend and neighbor named Angela Busker. Her father was Gary L. Busker, who actually, he was elected as a probate judge. He ran as the circuit judge or the head judge of Saline County on the Democratic ticket. I helped him campaign. I went to some of the events where he was running against Robbie Ravenhill. I voted for him. I registered as Democrat. Judge Busker was one of the guest federal judges in Springfield, Missouri when Jeffrey Dahmer was arraigned, because apparently the federal prison for inmates with psychiatric disorders, or what they used to call the criminally insane, that facility is in Springfield, Missouri. So that's where the arraignment was held. He was in the who's who of American lawyers and judges and prosecutors and yada, yada, yada. He was a University of Missouri graduate, so he was Klan, and he was most certainly a Clinton Dixiecrat crony. And all of our old video from back in the 80s establishes that. He was definitely part of the bringing in the drugs and human trafficking that revolved around Slick Willie or Bill Clinton's flying in drugs through Mena, Arkansas to fund Reagan's Iran-Contras. I was a victim of child sex trafficking. My mother's family was part of that drug trafficking and sex trafficking and child trafficking, which is still really bad in Missouri. It's bad. It's not as bad here. It's somewhat, bad here, but nothing like what it is there. Because the patriarchal, heterodominant slave attitude is still so prominent, not only in men, but women as well. I'm not just Chad's sex abuse victim. I'm also the sex abuse victim of a nurse practitioner named Beth Sweeney, who was a nurse practitioner and a teacher at a University of Missouri teaching facility called Family Health Center in Boone County, where the then or now former Missouri Medicaid director, Dr. Joseph Parks, was the chief psychiatrist. He's also a professor of psychiatry at University of Missouri. He was appointed by then Governor Jay Nixon, another Clinton crony. But they were covering for convicted fraudster Rick Scott, then Governor Rick Scott, who was covering for Jeb Bush, who was certainly covering for his brother, Shrub Bush, George W., Obama's 10th cousin, which we didn't know that, on all of the racketeering that involves frauds on HUD, Medicaid, Medicare, marketplace plans. But our investigation was mandated. Chad did not know that he was his father, Butch, or H.G. Butch Cronin, was on the board of directors at Orlando Regional Medical Center that knew I had cancer, wasn't telling me. Them and the other hospital, Advent, that is owned by Advent Health, which is partnered with Catholic Health, was making false criminal allegations saying I was just drug seeking for narcotics, and then making false psychiatric diagnosis to try to get me fraudulently qualified for SSI under a bogus psych, so that I would then get Medicaid, qualify for Medicaid, which would retroactively pay for all of their unbundling frauds that included false criminal allegations. This is significant also because Chad was contracted with Orlando Police Department as their biased crimes advisor, because he's a civil rights scholar. He's all about protecting everyone's civil rights. And the president of the Gay and Lesbian Law Association. And an ethics, received 2 letters of commendation for ethics from the Florida Bar, and lectured new bar members on ethics. And a former Orange County, Florida state's attorney specializing in the prosecution of domestic violence. So, besides being a former civil rights investigator and federal investigator for DOJ under Kamala Harris's brother-in-law, Tony West, all of these organizations, it's the most embarrassing situation for them. Talk about a public relations nightmare. Plus, he was partnered with the NAACP, HRC, you know, ACLU, Autism Speaks. All of these organizations are co-opted. None of them are looking out for us. And that's probably why I made sure I put that in my sealed whistleblower indictments. That's probably why they're blowing all these civil rights organizations up for helping Cuomo. They're not just helping Cuomo, they're helping all of Epstein's allies in both major parties, including Trump. Cuomo being one of Trump's New York real estate attorneys. So, fast forward, I'm in Burlington because when we started this investigation, we really didn't know that the Democrats were just another branch of the Republican Party. We couldn't conceive of it. After I didn't know who Sanders was until 2015 when he made his first bid for presidency. And to be perfectly honest, I have no idea how I learned of his candidacy or how I became a supporter of him and his policies. I don't remember. What I do remember is that I had no television. I had a TV, but it had no service. I couldn't even pick up, local news. It didn't have one of those special antennas on it. I pretty much all of my social interaction, I was in an apartment that I got from a special emergency voucher as a trafficking victim through Columbia Housing Authority, through what I now know to be bogus. Sorry, there's mosquitoes flying around. I got snow on the ground and I got mosquitoes flying around, only in Burlington. Probably all up north on the Canadian border, but anyway, all of my social interaction was pretty much Facebook, and I had joined autism support groups, so I had maybe 300 Facebook friends, and they were all on the spectrum. Most of my activity, any type of interaction or information intake, was from my fellow autistic friends because I was learning my traits, how to accommodate myself, how to let other people know I have special needs, and information and communication processing. Watching a lot of Temple Grandin lectures on Google. And I do remember that many people on the spectrum very much supported Senator Sanders and gave a huge lecture as to why. And Senator Sanders is very logical and very human services, very much a humanitarian, and that appeals to most of us on the spectrum. Not everybody on the spectrum is empathic people who want to be humanitarian. There are plenty of people on the spectrum that are violent offenders and narcissists. So that doesn't mean everybody is. It just means there are a few. But I can tell you it's very seldom. I've only had to block 4 other people on the spectrum for being patriarchal, heterodominant, biased sort of predators. Whereas I don't even know how many people, probably, 20, 30, 40, 50, or 100 people that aren't on the spectrum I've had to block. So it's very rare because our nature is that of logicians, but there are those who are so abused or just had so many privileges that it just, it's a conditioned response. It's how you're brought up. So basically, that's how I heard about Bernie, and I really didn't have much to say about it. It wasn't so much that I was for Bernie because I was against anybody else. It was basically his logical thinking and deductive reasoning that appealed to me, and whatever his policies were. I don't even remember what his policies were for that 2015 campaign. No clue. I do remember not wanting to support Hillary Clinton. I knew her boy Jay Nixon wanted me dead, and she was helping Beth Sweeney and Chad Cronin kill me. And Trump was saying, oh yeah, we're going to lock up the Clintons, and he was pretending to be this he basically took on Bernie's platforms falsely, which was a very good strategic move on Trump's part. That's why I thought I'd rather have Trump in office than Hillary Clinton any day of the week. In fact, I was in Arizona during the general election, and remember that because Trump was saying he was going to raise minimum wage and fight for the working man, as soon as he won the election, they immediately raised their minimum wage to 10 or 10.50 an hour, something to that effect. And all of the homeless people that were working were so excited. They just loved Trump. They went out and got jobs because instead of making $7.50 an hour, they were making $10 an hour. Some of them even got 2 jobs. Oh, I'm making sick. Last week I was sleeping under a bridge, and this week I'm making. Last month I was sleeping under a bridge with nothing, and this month smoking crack or drinking, and this month I'm making $600 a week, working 2.30 an hour a week jobs, and I've got a iPhone, and I've got this, and all the working class fell in love, and even not even working. A lot of them were homeless addicts or non-addicts. Not to say all homeless are addicts. That's absolutely crap. It does play a role in some people being homeless, but so does domestic violence and this whole COVID crap. But what I'm saying is, everybody fell in love with Trump in Arizona because Arizona started implementing these policies that Trump said he was going to fight for. So that's why it wasn't until later that we realized it was all a dupe. Especially when Doug Ducey and that Republican Attorney General in Arizona made sure there was no oversight on the doctors that were murdering me. They let the Goldwaters handle it. Okay, Virginia G. Piper says she's Democrat, and she claims she's AKA Peggy Goldwater, claims to be the civil rights scholar, and she may be academically, but she's still really just a dilettante because she's had too much money and privilege all of her life, and she still very much subscribes to Joe Biden's crime bill rhetoric. But it only applies to the poor. It doesn't apply to her and her friends, like as addicts and alcoholics. She said she's a very good friend of Bill W. That's saying she's an alcoholic and addict. All of her brothers most of them were famous for their scandals and debacles as alcoholics and addicts. One had to resign as a California senator. Another one I video and audio recorded sitting there telling me he was an addict and alcoholic, and he was shaking, and I could tell he was definitely not a regular homeless person. He had too much discipline and too much polish, but I could see he was definitely struggling. And I knew he was. Sure enough, later on, I watched videos about Barry Goldwater, and this guy that I have on film and audio from the Cass campus is on that video talking about his father, Barry Goldwater. I don't remember his name. It wasn't Barry Goldwater Jr., and I don't think it was Michael. It might have been. I'm going to have to look at it again, but it's the one that they don't picture in Wikipedia. But anyway, she's on that campus. I have her on video, and I earned my meritorious star by testifying before Congress about the appropriate application of affirmative action in the military. So just like Chad Cronin, all of their accolades are strictly academic. In reality, they've never been poor or truly they've been the victim of discrimination only because of their sexual orientation or gender. It falls under the same Title IX. But they've never had to worry about food. They've never had to worry about their children's lives. They've never had to worry about going to jail. They never had to worry about suffering the consequences of their actions as somebody in active addiction and alcohol and drugs. Very much like, she's a Goldwater, so she's had the same privileges as, say, Hunter Biden. So, and she's a Homeland Security agent. Her ex-husband, John McCain, was a Homeland Security Committee member. And She has the Virginia G. Piper Cancer Treatment Network at Honor Health, which is partnered with Catholic Health and Tenet. Tenet CEO is under federal, one of their former CEOs is under federal indictment for healthcare fraud. $4 million in healthcare fraud. That's just Virginia and Georgia. That doesn't include Arizona and all their subsidiaries that make them a nationwide monopoly, very much like Catholic Health was, even before they officially merged and turned into what's called Common Spirit Health. I mean, they still all answer to the Vatican, even as Dignity, which was considered Catholic Health West, and Catholic Health Initiatives, which was Catholic Health East, both of whom's CEOs helped Obama write the Affordable Care Act that created this massive monopoly, illegal monopoly, violating antitrust laws, claiming they're integrating to maintain continuity of care when they're integrating to maintain continuity of basically medical martial law, where you don't get informed consent, you don't get a second opinion, and then they use the Jim Crow crime bill rhetoric crap to justify their atrocities. So, and of course, they're partnered with United Health and United Healthcare and Centene Corporation, both of whom are facing RICO violations, lawsuits in multiple states, besides mine in the state of New York. So, okay, Bernie then runs, in the interim, between that Bernie's 2015 presidential run, where am I at? I'm at 21 minutes. Okay, try to wrap this up in another 10 minutes or so. So in the interim, I'm going from state to state, back and forth, trying desperately to get cancer treatment where all I get is threatened. Finally, plus I think that they killed Chad, but not really, because I've had my mom and Tara Marshall, a Cross Disability Advisory Board member for Phoenix PD, let me know he's just sequestered. So the people he's blackmailing don't kill him, basically. And so to play the sympathy card, to think that I'll be sympathetic and not want to slander a dead man's name, which, I didn't, that's what I mean when I said I didn't come forward and volunteer to give my life for any damn lawyer or his corrupt clients, especially when they're all in bed with Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell and their clientele and powerful partners in crime. So, basically, fast forward, Bernie Sanders runs for president again. I know all these people are corrupt and trying to kill me, but I still couldn't conceive of the bigger picture. I'd heard the word oligarchy and corporatocracy, but still didn't. That doesn't mean anything. It's kind of like going to work at McDonald's. You can watch training videos. That just preps you for, you'll have some basic concept when you get out there and do it. You still got to have that hands-on training and in-person experience to really grasp the concepts that those videos are trying to teach you. So the same concept, when Bernie ran for president again in 2019, I was in New York, already seeing how the corruption was still going on there in New York. And this time, when Facebook suggested all these friends, because they were also Bernie supporters, I'm like, I'm not learning much from my autistic friends. Let me expand my horizons. And so I learned so much because of what little bit I had learned from them, my autistic friends supporting Senator Sanders. But that was such a small circle, and they were having to be quiet so they didn't get killed. That's when I befriended upwards of 4,500, over 4,000 people on Facebook of Bernie's constituents globally, not just here in the U.S. And that's when I started learning about the economy of communism and capitalism and centrism, and started seeing posts about how Obama was saying, "Thou shalt not go too far left." And I'm like, okay. And that's when I really started learning what I needed to learn. So when United Healthcare called me and threatened me, and then sent crisis services workers to my home in Buffalo to try to gain illegal access, to try to lock me up on a psych ward again before the SEC was about to determine. They were doing it because they knew I was about to file a whistleblower lawsuit, and they were trying to lock me up to prevent that from happening. Plus, they thought I was going to die any minute. That's the only reason why I'm still alive. And once I saw that article come out, I talked with my landlords because they wanted to know what the hell was going on with all the crap. And she said, oh, they own stock in this stuff. Cuomo owns stock in these corporations. That's when I knew I needed to write it up to the SEC. And if it hadn't been for all of those constituents of Senator Sanders who were educated, properly educated, out there teaching all of us and having the conversations and correcting each other when somebody would post something that was truly was inconsistent with what we were fighting for, they would be very diplomatic whenever they would post a comment, that's not right because of this, this, and this. And they were truly acting like teachers. And eventually, Nico House and Mikasa Sukasa video floated up in my Facebook page, and I clicked on that Nico House's and Mikasa Sukasa's YouTube channel, which then put that algorithm all of a sudden, finally, eventually, everybody kept telling me, you got to contact Jimmy Dore, you got to contact him. I'm like, who the fuck is Jimmy Dore? Who's Nico? Who are these people? What the hell are they talking about? Still didn't know. And then finally, the algorithm caught on, and this is where Facebook kind of screws itself, and big tech screwed itself by spying on us for the corporations. It's now blowing up in their face because our team is educated and now truly understands what's going on. And I knew that I knew somebody in New York would eventually help me. I lived in New York at one point and got on the witness stand in Superior Court and was had to be examined by a forensic psychiatrist to rule out any psychiatric issues or drug addiction issues or whatever. And had a work comp claim there that went on for almost 2 years or more. So they knew there's no history of schizophrenia. You don't develop schizophrenia as just a basic mental illness. If you do develop it later because of some trauma or brain tumor or infection, that's schizophrenia secondary to whatever caused the lesions in the brain damage. They're not saying I have schizophrenia secondary to trauma or infection or whatever. They're just saying, oh, she's just schizophrenic, just a basic, Axis 1 diagnosis, and that's crap. So the New York Department of Labor, those claims don't ever go anywhere because you can be injured on the job at age 70. They're going to look at every single previous work comp claim, every single medical record, because they have to determine pre-existing conditions. So we had evidence in the state of New York that was relevant to our investigation against Chad Cronin, his parents, and all their cronies in both parties. And while Senator Sanders was still running for president, one of his supporters, constituents here in Vermont, sent me a private message. It was either a private message or commented on a post and said, you need to come to Burlington. I was, and I'm paraphrasing here. She said she had worked at the UVMT hospital and said they don't run that fraud crap here. That fraud doesn't go on here. And actually it does, it just isn't quite as brutal and in your face. They're a lot more sneaky about it and take on this very gentle, loving attitude, which the Copeland Galore did not. She was very nasty. But my recordings of Carrie Goulet and Marcus and Annalisa Reynolds at Safe Harbor, and the nurse. Most of the nurses at UVMT were cool. It was the doctors who were the physician's assistants who were nasty, and one of the house supervisor was nasty and used Joe Biden crime bill rhetoric. But see, I didn't even know. I knew Chad taught me that they made drugs illegal to maintain segregation, but he didn't teach me that Joe Biden was behind that and that Bill Clinton signed that into law. I learned that from Bernie's constituents. So when they locked me up on the psych ward again for the second time, and I'm deathly ill, dying of sepsis, that's when I said, I got to get out of here. And my first move was to New York City. I didn't realize their homeless system was so bad. I couldn't conceive that their homeless system was worse than Buffalo or Albany, which is equally as corrupt as it is here and everywhere else. So I said, screw this. I can't deal with New York City. It was too big, trying to get around. I didn't know the bus systems. It was too much. So I came to Burlington. And I couldn't figure out why all the people at the shelters were so damn nervous about me being there. I know now. They're running these scams against New York Medicaid and Vermont Medicaid right along with everybody else. So the reason why I made this video is so Senator Sanders, because I've reached out to him for help, and I've reached out to the Burlington City Council. I'm not here because of some celebrity status that he has, or because I see, AOC, progressive is the new celebrity, where it used to be like Chad Cronin. He tries to be a celebrity and look like a hero to appeal to his malignant heroism, which is, of course, secondary to a narcissistic personality disorder, by claiming to be a civil rights this and civil rights that, and ooh, I love Cornel West, and had his book laying on the back of the toilet, which pretty much tells you where his priorities are for Cornel West. Professor, I should say Dr. West, to be more respectful. And I am sorry, I'm not trying to appeal to social graces right now. I'm just putting it out there as it is. But now, progressives are the new what Democrats rose to power by claiming to be. I'm not here because of celebrity status. I'm not here because I want you all to help me win a lawsuit that's going to help me win a lot of money. All of that money is going to be donated to causes, and all my true progressive friends here in Burlington will be hired. I can't go around offering people jobs. I don't have any money. But in my head, I know that I'm making true friends that have kept Bernie Sanders and these progressives and independents in office at Burlington City Council. I'm learning so much from them. They are saving my life. They're not even hesitating to help me. They're helping me and daring anybody to fuck with. And that's the attitude I need. They're real warriors, or what Native Americans call rainbow warriors. Fuck around and find out. We're going to do the right thing because it's the right thing to do. Fuck with us for it. Do so at your own peril. That's exactly the attitude I need. I'm here as a strategic move. Number one, I've learned so much more over the past 2 years. Number two,